During the U.S. Senate debate Monday, hosted by 21 WFMJ Youngstown, I asked Republican candidate JD Vance about the now infamous comment from former President Donald Trump that JD is kissing my ass because he wants my support. Here's our exchange. Gentlemen, political subservience is kryptonite to this hotly contested race. Mr. Vance, Congressman Ryan has called you Donald Trump's ass kisser. The implication being you will pay any price for the endorsement and support of the former president who publicly insulted you in Youngstown. To prove the congressman wrong and to show Ohio voters that you are your own man, I would like you to identify one issue that Mr. Trump is wrong about and therefore deserving of public criticism.
Well, look, I disagree with the president on a number of things. He's a friend of mine, of course, and I'm proud to have his endorsement. But look, the thing that was wrong about the Trump administration is they put a lot of people in the administration, a lot of bad personnel folks who actually advocated limitless, nonstop wars that would mean a lot of folks from Mahoning Valley and a lot of folks from where I grew up would have to go off and fight those wars. A guy like John Bolton, for example, should have never been national security advisor in the Trump administration. But let me address Tim Ryan's point and your question there. Donald Trump told a joke. He told a joke at a rally based on a false New York Times story, and Tim Ryan has decided to run his entire campaign on it. Now look, Tim Ryan is publicly out there on national television saying, "I love Nancy Pelosi." A few months ago, he went before a national audience and said that he has to suck up and kiss up to Chuck Schumer. The guy who's subservient to the national party is Tim Ryan, who's been begging for these guys to come into this race and save him from the campaign that he's been running. So look, it's ridiculous for him to accuse me of being anything because he has utterly failed to be independent to represent this valley, and he will utterly fail to represent the people of Ohio if he's elected to the United States Senate.
So just so I get this straight, when the former president said, JD is kissing my ass because he wants my support, you took that as a joke?
I know the president very well, and absolutely, he was joking about a New York Times story. That's all he was doing. I didn't take offense to it. I talked to the president before it. I talked to the president afterwards. Everybody there took it as a joke. This guy goes on national TV and says, "I love Nancy Pelosi," and has the audacity of accusing me of kissing anyone's rear end. It's pretty rich.
Okay, so we'll get to you, Congressman.
Yeah.
Mr. Vance has portrayed you as a lapdog for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other Democratic leaders in Congress, and says that you will do their bidding in the Senate. To prove him wrong, I would like you to point to an issue that Speaker Pelosi has totally bungled and therefore deserves public repudiation.
Well, let me just first say that this is obviously a clip that JD is running to try to misrepresent people. I ran against Nancy Pelosi, JD, for leadership. And you have to have the courage to take on your own leaders. These leaders in D.C.
Why don't you vote against them?
They will eat you up like a chew toy, right? I mean, you were calling Trump America's Hitler. Then you kissed his ass.
That's not true.
It is true. And then you kissed his ass, and then he endorsed you. And you said he's the greatest president of all time. Mitch McConnell gave you $40 million to prop up your campaign. Peter Thiel gave you $15 million. That's $55 million, JD. What do you think they want for that? They want your loyalty. And you proved that you'll kiss their ass too. And look, it's nothing personal. I'm just telling you, like, I've been in this business. It's tough business. If you think you're going to help Ohio, you're not. If you can't even stand up for yourself, how are you going to stand up for the people of the state? How are you going to take on the corporate interests? All the money you took are from the corporations who sent all our jobs overseas. Peter Thiel, $15 million, buddy. What do you think he wants?
Can you answer the question?
Notice how he didn't answer the question, and he did just attack me, so let me respond here. You've taken tens of millions of dollars, Tim, from technology companies, from out-of-state money. What percent of your donors have come from the state of Ohio? A very small share. His entire campaign is based on sucking up to the national Democratic establishment, and of course they support you, Tim, because you support their policies 100%. Now, here's what happened. He says he challenged Nancy Pelosi for leadership, but then he goes on national TV and says that he loves her. Is that the price of challenging Nancy Pelosi?
Can I
doing it for,
yes,
what,
thank you,
a
Mr.
few
Vance.
days before you failed,
Congressman.
like you've done with everything that you've tried to get through for the people
Thank
of
you, Mr.
Youngstown?
Vance.
Derek, let me just answer that. The quote of me saying, I love Nancy Pelosi, was right before I said I'm running against her. You know why? Because I don't have to hate anybody. I don't have to hate Republicans. I don't have to hate Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden. I don't have to hate them. We need to move the political discourse in this country from hate and anger and division to love and compassion and forgiveness and some grace. And all I'm saying is, I don't have to hate her. I took her on. I took her on. She was the top Democrat in the entire country, tough as nails. And I stood toe-to-toe with her in a room full of 220 of my colleagues, with her sitting in the audience, and I spoke my piece. Because when you're from the Valley, that's what you do.
All right,
and then
Then
you shake
failed
hands.
Thank you,
and
candidate.
voted with her 100%
Hey,
of
let's
the
move
time.
on to
If
the
you
next
want to
one.
stand up
Tried
to your
my
own party,
best.
vote against
Thank you,
them.
Mr.
What?
Vance.
However, if you read Mr. Trump's entire comment, it's clear that it wasn't made in jest. Indeed, it can be said that Vance handed his manhood to Trump during a political rally in Youngstown on September 17. Trump, the former one-term president who has a stranglehold on the Republican Party in America, was the main attraction for the 6,000-plus true believers who jammed the Covelli Center to hear their man rail for about 2 hours about how the 2020 election was stolen from him, but how he has become the target of a grand federal government conspiracy led by the Justice Department and FBI, and about how he's seriously giving consideration to again running for president in 2024. Although the purpose of Trump's visit to Ohio was to prop up Vance, who is in a tight race with Mahoning Valley Congressman Tim Ryan, it was clear that the ex-president was focused mainly on himself as he spoke to his rabid supporters. It is particularly noteworthy that Trump's mention of Vance's candidacy was highlighted by this comment, quote, "The New York Times did a fake story today, big front page, that JD wasn't sure if he wanted my support. JD is kissing my ass. He wants my support. This is a great person who I've really gotten to know. Yeah, he said some bad things about me, but that was before he knew me, and then he fell in love." Vance just sat there while Trump publicly insulted him before giving him a backhanded compliment. What a high price to pay for the endorsement of the Republican Party's Lord and Master. The crowd, many of whom were supporters of the late Valley Congressman Jim Traficant, was not fazed by such bullying tactics. After all, during his 17 years in Congress, Traficant, one of the most powerful politicians in the history of this region, used his popularity with the voters to ensure that other office holders and politicians didn't step out of line. Traficant often threatened to run a challenge against any incumbent office holder he considered his enemy. For Trump to treat Vance as his Mar-a-Lago butler says more about the GOP senatorial candidate than the megalomaniac who exudes the arrogance of inherited wealth. Vance could have walked out of the Covelli Center with his head held high and may well have attracted undecided voters in the November general election had he responded to Trump's insult by going up to the microphone and saying, "Take your endorsement, Mr. Trump, and shove it." Instead, Trump's description of the author of the popular book Hillbilly Elegy as an ass-kisser grabbed headlines around the country. I'm Bertram de Souza, retired editorial page editor and Sunday columnist for the now-closed Youngstown Vindicator and host of the Scribbler Publishing Group podcast, streamed on my YouTube channel, Facebook page, WFMJ.com, and other digital platforms. I spent 40 years at the Vindicator writing about local, state, and national politics.